everyone, it's Sarah, and today I'm here with my October reading wrap-up. So October was a decent reading month for me. Probably not as decent as I wanted it to be, but I did read 5 books. The first book I listened to on audio, and that was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I've heard a lot of good things about Maggie Stiefvater and several of her books. And this is kind of an urban fantasy. In my Pop Sugar reading challenge that I'm doing for the year, one of the challenges was to read an entire trilogy. I thought this series, The Raven Cycle, was a trilogy, but it turns out there's a 4th book coming out next year. But there are only 3 books out so far, so I think that counts. Anyway, The Raven Boys is about... Well, it's kind of hard to explain. So, at the beginning of the novel, there's a girl named Blue, who is the daughter of kind of a clairvoyant, psychic woman. And she is standing in a churchyard when she sees a dead boy. But it turns out the boy is not actually dead yet, and this was like a premonition type thing. So that kind of is how the novel starts. So it's, urban fantasy, very kind of eerie. I thought it would be a good October-y read. And I really enjoyed it. I am interested to see what happens in the next book. Kind of waiting on that one. I'm gonna see if they have it in my library, because I've spent way too much money on books over the past year, and I'm trying not to buy any more. At least until January. But anyway, yes, The Raven Boys. Pretty good read. I will say that the narrator on Audible I thought was awesome. He was kind of like this older man who had like kind of a raspy, gritty, sort of twangy voice, and it just really worked for the mood and the atmosphere. So the next book that I read was an ebook, and that was Life and Death by Stephenie Meyer. This is the reimagined version of Twilight, where the vampire is a girl and the kind of Bella character is named Beau and he's a boy, so all of the genders have been swapped. I was not a huge fan of this book. I already made a video talking about it in more detail and about the Twilight books in general. I will link to that down below so you can check it out if you want to. The next book that I read was The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. So Morgan at Little Word Weaver told me about this Halloween challenge that they were doing on Goodreads. I think there were like 15 or 20 books listed on there. So I knew I wasn't going to read all of them, but this was one of the books that was listed, and I've always just wanted to read this book. Anyway, it's been on my shelf for quite a while. I'm a huge fan of the musical, so I thought I would pick it up as part of a kind of October Halloween creepy read. And I really enjoyed it. It was very different from the musical. I feel like the Phantom, they tried to make him like kind of sexy in the musical, where he's like, seducing her almost. Whereas in the book, I did not get that vibe at all. It seemed like he was actually scary to Christine in the book. For those of you who don't know what the Phantom of the Opera is about, it's about this opera house that is kind of haunted by an opera ghost. That's what everyone thinks. And Christine is this kind of new soprano who becomes a star at the opera house, and she's been training with this kind of mysterious voice. It was a really good read. I will say that in the book, the end was a lot more poignant and sad than in the musical. It's sad in the musical too, but it just kind of hit home for me a lot more in the book. And I kind of like the Phantom being scarier because, let's face it, for those of you who saw the movie version of the musical where Gerard Butler played the Phantom, I mean, if it's Gerard Butler, like, in a mask, even if he is kind of stalkery and creepy, it's still Gerard Butler. So you're probably going to be like, hey, that's okay. Okay, so after I read Life and Death and I was kind of disappointed, I picked up Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Mandy from Oh It's Mandy has been talking about this series a lot on her channel, and I swear every time I go to watch a video on her channel, it makes me want to read this series. So it was already on my mind, but it's been described to me by many people as Twilight with aliens, which I think is pretty accurate. I absolutely loved it. There are a lot of similarities in the story, at least in the first book. I am told that it gets different as the series goes on. I would be continuing with the series, but we're getting to that point at the end of the year where I am kind of scrambling to finish all of the books on my Pop Sugar reading challenge. So I'll probably have to wait until January to finish this series. But I cannot wait. I really liked all of the characters in this book. But also I just really I liked the world that Jennifer L. Armentrout created. And I was happy to read a book from her that I really enjoyed because I read Half-Blood that she wrote a while ago, and I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. But I've heard so many good things about her as a writer, so I kind of wanted to read a book that I felt represented her as an author more. So then I reread The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. I realized that I have not seen this cover before because apparently it is the UK version that I got from the book depository. I flew through it. It's still my favorite book. It was interesting reading it this time because I hadn't read it in a while, and I definitely hadn't read it since I have seen the movie. When I saw the movie, I was thinking that it was almost exactly like the book. But then, I read the book and I realized there were quite a few differences. I feel like the movie has the same tone of the book, probably because Chbosky wrote the screenplay and directed it. I feel like the book was just a little grittier and kind of edgier than the movie. Maybe because if they had done like a straight adaptation, it probably would have been rated R. Seems like there's a lot more teenage drug use in the book than was in the movie, although there was some in the movie. Either way, it was really interesting to read the book again from a more adult perspective. And even coming from that adult perspective, yes, some of the writing is simplistic and kind of childish, but I think it really works because he assumed the voice of Charlie, this 15-year-old kid, writing these letters throughout all of it, and that felt really authentic to me. And I love Charlie. He's one of my favorite characters, and I might not relate to him all that much anymore. I've grown and I'm not a teenager anymore, and I've kind of learned some things, but there will always be a part of me that is Charlie. Okay, so those were the books that I read in October. What about you? What did you read in October? What was your favorite book that you read in October? Have you read any of these books? Do you have any thoughts? I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos about books, music, writing. I'm going to be doing weekly writing videos in November for NaNoWriMo. And until next time, thanks for watching.